Hi, everybody. I am Brad Kuvin. I'm the editorial director of Metal Forming Magazine. Welcome to our case study on metal forming lubrication technology with metal former Marion Manufacturing, along with Tower Metalworking Fluids. I want to thank everybody for joining us on this broadcast. We're going to discuss today the benefits of taking a scientific and technology-based approach to auditing your stamping plant, looking specifically at lubricant selection and lubricant application as well. The benefits that metal formers can gain through this type of process, as we'll hear from Marion Manufacturing, include improved efficiency and throughput, as well as quality, and some other benefits as well. So I am joined today by Bob Anderson. Bob is the Vice President of Sales for Tower Metalworking Fluids, and Tyler Johnson. Tyler is the plant manager at Marion Manufacturing, which is located in Cheshire, Connecticut. So Tyler, why don't you tell us a little bit about what Marion does and the type of work that you do, and your work with Tower Metalworking Fluids.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, thanks, Brad, for having me. Thanks, Bob, for the support on these projects. And I'm excited to talk about how we work together and what we've done. But Marion Manufacturing is a 79-year-old contract manufacturer. So we're metal stamping from 10 to 100 tons, working in material thicknesses from 003 up to about 200,000 stick. All different materials, coppers, red metals, stainless steel, everything in between. And so as you can imagine, we have a lot of different applications for different lubricants. We have a lot of different forming. We're serving markets like aerospace, medical, electronics. So we've got some high speed, high volume production, and different products need different lubricants. And so in our 79 years of history, we never really looked at lubricant as the tool that it could be for us. And we kind of had a one size fits all approach, and had a red oil for most of the stuff and a vanishing oil and maybe one water soluble solution. But over the past few years, really started with Bob came in, did an audit of our plant, looked at the applications, looked at our lubricants, and we picked one project to start with in particular, where they did a test of the existing lubricant we had, offered a solution for it. We went back and forth, said, okay, what do we want to accomplish here? We're trying to increase our speed. We're trying to decrease the heat in the part. We want to increase tool life. All the wishes that every metal stamper has. We want to run longer. We want to do less and make better parts at the same time. And Bob, I'll let you speak a little bit to how that process went and what it looked like. But it really just started with Tower coming in and taking a look at what are we doing today.
Yeah, so I'm Bob Anderson with Vice President of Sales for Tower Metalworking Fluids. We are a 92-year-old company, employee-owned, based in Chicago, where we make all our products. Single manufacturing location, and everything comes right out of that facility. And really appreciate Tyler giving us the opportunity to work with him, and Brad, you and PMA, to give us the opportunity to tell our little story here, because I think there's a story to tell and some information to learn, right? So yeah, our trip with Tyler was pretty awesome. He's pretty, they've got a pretty nice operation, and his concerns and the questions that he wanted to address are really pretty typical of a lot of people, and we started on the front end. We walked the shop and just walked and talked and did a little audit about, what are we using here? Why are we doing this? What's this application method look like? And we took a whole process approach. We looked from the front end to the back end, and everything that he wanted to accomplish, which of course, like everybody else, is let's make more parts, right? Right. And they have to be good. So yeah, it was a great opportunity, and it was a lot of fun, and I think we'll hear a pretty good story today as we go through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Bob. So did you want to kind of walk through the audit process, Bob, and show the PowerPoint slides that you put together for us today?
Yeah, let me go ahead and put that up. All right, here we go.
Yep.
So,
Perfect.
got it all? Perfect.
Yep, looks good. Yep.
Okay. So a little bit about Tower, who we are, what we stand for. I'm not going to bore you into the details of that, but the bottom line is we're about, providing solutions and results with safe products for both the employees and the environment. We try and keep everything as hazard and pictogram free as possible, because our people are working with it. We certainly don't want other people working with things that are going to be detrimental to their long-term health. Doing business with us as a company, you can see from our metrics, they're something that just about anybody can be proud of, right? We ship over 90% of our products are shipped in 3 days or less. And I mentioned the hazard-free product lines, which is over 75% of our products have absolutely no hazardous pictograms, creating a very nice environment for people. What our customers say about us, of course, it's everybody loves us, right? But that said, let's move on to what's important for today. The top reasons people come and call us up and say, what can you do for me? And usually the number one reason is help me make the part. I've got a part here. I either can't make it or I need to do a better job of getting parts out the door. Second reason would be post-process issues. I'm having trouble welding. I'm having trouble cleaning. I'm having trouble doing assembly, you name it, things like that. Environmental health and safety issues, or in a lot of cases, product consolidation. We'll get into that a little bit down the road here. But, if we look at it, we say, we're in a position of help me make this part, okay? It's common to find that the current lubricant that people are using doesn't have the right type or amount of lubricity or the right properties to do the job. It's not an uncommon thing. And that can vary with each metal former and the process that they have. Galling may be an issue. That could be possibly a lubricant lubricity issue or the need for some type of an extreme pressure additive that, so not that the product that they've been using was bad, it just wasn't optimal for the process that they're looking at today. And then probably a big one, dimensional issues. It's important to determine why. Is it a tooling issue? Is it something to do with the lubricant? Is the lubricant too thin? Is it too thick? Does it just not have the right type of chemistries? Is it the wrong chemistry? Is it something that's actually working against you? Are you using a straight oil when you should use a water soluble or a synthetic chemistry? That can all make a difference as we go through our conversation today. We did almost a full circle of events, going from a water soluble to a straight oil, getting some control and a handle on the process, and now going back and re-optimizing and coming in with another water soluble product that's truly designed for the process that Tyler has going on that we targeted. And then finally, in making the part, it's a run at rate performance issue. And this could be a lot of things. It could be feed issues. It could be all kinds of things related to either tooling or, which that's not our wheelhouse, although Tower, many of our field engineers can have a tooling background and can help with that. But, what's the lubricant doing that is not allowing somebody to run at the production rates that they want, which is key, right? 10% a 10% improvement on a press making 200 strokes a minute is pretty huge. If you can double that, that's even better. So, let's see where we can go, right? It's all fun. Post-processing, secondary operations, people having issues with welding, things that we look at is, can you use a disappearing oil? Cautions using solvents. Obviously, a lot of your disappearing compounds are petroleum-based solvents. They're very flammable. That can get a little exciting around welders. Or you could use some next generation non-hazardous technology too that does that job. Something like our safety vanish line. Is it possible to use a low residue soluble oil or a clean weld through synthetic. All kinds of good things that can happen. Cleanliness issues, not necessarily the same thing. You can clean a part, but not have enough cleanliness to get it to where you want. That may be chemistry related. There's things that we can do from a lubricant standpoint, and or just looking at the process and coming up with other ways to help get a part to through the cleaning line and get you the cleanliness that you're looking for. And then of course there's stain issues and or storage protection, which stain is largely material related, and material, not only the base metal, but the chemistry of the lubricant may not be compatible, or storage protection. These are not uncommon for people to look at it, say, I need to get 2 weeks worth of protection. But is that 2 weeks? Are the parts flat stacked? How are they going into your packaging containers or short-term storage? These are all things that can make a difference, that we talk with people about and help them. Environmental health and safety things, chemical restrictions. Are there restrictions? The big restrictions we usually see are chlorine, or other halogens and chelators. That's big in the aerospace, defense industry, nuclear, things like that. Silicones, which anybody that has, a powder coat line is familiar with. You don't want to have things like that. But these are important things to know on the front end when we're helping people out. And then health concerns, whether it's a skin irritant or an acute health concern, that's all things that we want to look at. And people come to us and say, hey, I've got, Joe out on the production line, and the guy's at the dermatologist, and it's one, Joe's not happy, his wife's not happy, and it's just not a good situation for anybody, to be dealing with that. And then finally, we get into safety and environmental. These things go along together sometimes. From a safety standpoint and environmental, we look at VOC discharging and permitting. If you're in a non-attainment zone, if folks are familiar with that, where you're restricted on what type of solvents you can use and how much you can use. We've actually worked with some people that we've been able to cut their VOC discharge in half, and enable them to significantly increase production. And then of course just waste stream discharge. We've got a product and we're bio-wetland, so we can't use an oil, or we store parts outside, so there can't be anything petroleum based. I've had a customer that the Department of Natural Resources came in and said, no more stuff, no more using that lubricant and storing your parts outside, guys. We've got this nice little trail that's running down into the street. That's not a good thing. So these are all concerns that people have, right? And then we get into product consolidation. Not uncommon for a lot of shops to have 3, 4, 5. I've seen as many as 10 different lubricants in a single facility. And that's just too many products. Quite honestly, it becomes difficult to manage and control the inventory. Frequently people have multiple vendors. So you're dealing with multiple vendors, multiple delivery dates, multiple purchase orders, accounts payable. It's a big deal. It's a cost, right? When you start looking at, all that paperwork and things that people have to do. Potential quality issues that, go into having too many products. Is it the wrong lube on the part? Did it create a residue issue? Did it create something down the line in process where it created a welding issue? Any one of a number of things that can go wrong. Not to mention, contaminated spray systems, which, you get into some big transfer presses and, you wind up with a contaminated spray system. That's some serious time, unclogging those lines and getting it cleaned up, right? It's not a fun thing to do. So, and then finally, the last thing that we get into is pricing. I need to reduce my price. And usually the first thing I ask somebody is, well, tell me about that. Because your price and your cost are two different things. People also always say price and cost. It's not. Price is what you pay up on the front end. Cost is what it costs you on the back end. And sometimes a little bit more on price can save you big numbers on the back end in cost, really big. I think we did an article a few months ago with you, Brad, that highlighted that quite nicely, right?
Yep, sure.
So it's a real thing. And with that, I'll get back to you and jump out of this.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, that's very all-encompassing and something for all of our audience out there to think about when they walk around their own stamping facility. So Tyler, your project goes back, I think, what, about a year and a half, maybe early in
Yeah.
24. So maybe based on what some of the things Bob just went through, maybe you can tell us about what your experience has been on the shop floor since, Bob went through this audit
Absolutely.
process with you guys.
Yeah, so it's definitely been a journey, and I think what's nice about working with Tower is it's that endless pursuit of perfection. So it's like, even though we're well over a year into this project, we're still working on refining the lubricant even more. We haven't settled that. Even though we've had all these productivity gains, we know it can still be better. So where this started, Bob came in, did the audit. We sent samples of our lubricant that we were using. He looked at the way we were applying it, had some thoughts and some improvements on that, and did a test on our current on the lubricant we were using. Found out that we were mixing it at an incorrect ratio. It was actually closer to a straight oil than or more concentrate than water. And so that spurred the discussion of, okay, well, we were finding anytime we thinned it out any more than that or made it more water heavy, we would start to have cracking on the parts. So we started to look at trade oils. And Bob, you might be able to talk about some of the tests that you guys did in determining what straight oil we were going to go to, and some of the charts on the lubricity values and all of that stuff that we looked at just right at the inception even.
Yeah, so it was really interesting, and some of the stuff that was going on, with the variety and mixing and everything, with the straight oil or with the water soluble that they had, and why that led us to using a straight oil. We just, and talking with Tyler and having just a good conversation about it, being quite open and honest and saying, okay, well, this is what you're doing. This is what that lubricant's intended to do. And are we really getting the benefits out of it the way we're using it? Do we have the control that we need with that process to get the results out of the press, which, that's really the end goal, right? So in doing that, we broke it down, and we tested a water soluble, and I came back and Tyler and I talked about it, and I said we're really close. I said with these water solubles, we're getting pretty good results if I do this dilution compared to where we think you're at. We can really come up with a pretty good improvement. But if we're really looking to move the needle today, let's do something that is easy for everybody on the floor, right? So that there doesn't need to be a whole difficult retraining and realigning and relearning. The easiest way to have success is to set yourself up for success. So we came back and we looked at it and looked at the process, which that particular job was a thin stainless cup, studwood. Tyler, I don't know if you want to describe your part or not.
Yeah, essentially, we're starting with 008 thick material, and we're reducing it to about an 1/8 inch thick draw. And so we're thinning that material down to maybe 006.5. And so we're generating a good amount of heat through that. And as you can imagine, that metal being so thin, very prone to tearing and cracks. And so the thing we were after the most was increasing the lubricity reliably. Start.
Right. And this is, if I remember you guys talking about it, it's somewhat of a high-speed part.
Yes. Yeah. So at the time when we first got into this, we were running 3 parts at a time at around 300 strokes per minute. Anytime we would get up over that range, we'd start to see some real serious heat in the parts, and then we'd almost immediately see cracking. So that was kind of our limiting factor. And we weren't so convinced that it was the speed or the tooling. so much as the lubricant just not working well enough at that speed.
Okay.
So, and what we ran into with this part, it's stainless, and usually there's some, chemistries that lend themselves very well to stainless, but because of this particular application, we went back and we had some of those chemical restrictions, right? So we went back, we took our results from the lubricant analysis that we did, which was comparing the original water soluble to our water soluble, and we did that on a twist compression tester, which worked out pretty good for us in this case. And then we took those results and we came back and said, okay, based on what we know about where we're at with these chemistries, let's change the game a little bit. Let's come in with a straight oil. And we matched up a straight oil that gave us very similar properties, which was at that time, our Tower Draw 6620 CF, which worked pretty good for a little bit, right, Tyler?
Yeah, absolutely. It immediately we were able to increase our speed up to over 500 strokes a minute, which was something that I had been told, couldn't be done with the way that we're manufacturing this part. And so we immediately saw that gain. An unexpected consequence of that was this lubricant worked phenomenally well, but it had a bit of an odor to it. And the powers that be above me came and complained and said, hey, what's the smell in the shop? Is there anything we can do about that? And I felt a little bit ridiculous at first going to Bob and saying, hey, I know, we finally got a lubricant that worked. And we went through a couple iterations of the straight oil. And the one that seemed to work the absolute best, of course, had that smell. And I said, hey, we don't want to sacrifice, our productivity and everything we've worked towards. But is there anything that we can do to reduce this smell? And Tower actually went and did some more testing, changed some of the ingredients slightly, and ended up making a lubricant that further increased the lubricity of how it actually worked. And we actually got better results out of the better smelling lubricant. And there was a slight increase in cost to that, which we were happy to pay just for the difference in smell. But to have a tangible gain alongside of that was pretty cool.
So, hey, Tyler, so how much of a gain did we get going from the 6620 to the 6625?
The 66,
the final straight oil.
The final straight oil, we got well into the 500s per strokes per minute for speed. This is a job that we run unattended. Knock out wood, my KPIs and my charts have looked really good for scrap for the past several months, I would say, really, since switching to that. It's not just the ability to increase speed, but it's also the reliability of it, and having that predictability on, okay, are the parts going to be dimensionally stable? Can we throw some big bins under this machine and just walk away and know what we're going to get when we come back? Or is it, like what we were dealing with before, where it's like, all right, we can't really trust the lubricant necessarily. And Bob helped us develop, some better ways of applying the lubricant and really just looked at our entire process. And so in bringing that all together, the last straight oil that we had a lot of really, really tangible gains: speed, part stability, and increased tool life, which has been pretty incredible.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about the tool life improvements that you've seen.
Yeah, so what's interesting is we actually have two tools in two different presses with two different die sets, but essentially the same exact internal components. So we've got pretty good, two pretty good proving grounds to be able to say that we're seeing a difference in the tool life. And to give an example, I don't have hard numbers to quote necessarily, but we made about 40 million of these parts last month. And I would say we probably maintain that tool 4 to 6 times. So that would be about 10 million, maybe a little bit less in between maintenance. I would say at the inception of this project, we would have stood no shot at getting the 40 million produced in a month just because of speed. But we also weren't seeing more than maybe 3 million to 5 million at most parts in between maintenance intervals. And the other thing that's interesting is on both of these tools, the wear is incredibly predictable. We're not seeing galling. We're not seeing certain stations seem to be working harder than others. And I think maybe what was happening before, and this is speculation, but if the lubricant wasn't working how it truly needed to, and we weren't applying it to the strip the way that we are now, maybe that lubricant's not really carrying all the way through the tool. And so some of the later stations are working harder. We've just seen all around better results, really. I think that'd be a good segue to talk about, Bob, our most recent issue that we ran into with a new batch of material and how we kind of ended up back at a water soluble.
Right. So right now, one of the issues that came up is, well, we've been very successful going to the straight oil. A recent batch of raw material that came in was giving Tyler and his team quite a bit of fits. You know, they were getting some inconsistencies throughout the strip and how the tool would produce. We were getting a lot of heat generation that was evident in cracking parts and a few other things that just weren't adding up. So with that, we came back and we said, okay, let's take some more heat out of the part. And probably the best way to do that would be to go to a water soluble, you know, which was the original intent, right? That's what the tools were originally designed for. But now that we've had some success, I think it was real easy for Tyler to come back to his team and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we're going to do. Tyler and I talked about his process, and he says, I definitely got to make these stainless ones, but if we could be multi-metal, that would be awesome also.
Right.
So I sent him 2 water-soluble products, our Tower 5858 and our Tower Pro 5840. And we just finished, well, we're not finished. I think you're still in the middle of some production runs.
Yeah.
But we started off with the 5858 at a 20% mix. And I think the results have been pretty impressive. Eliminated the quality issues, and you can talk about what you're getting.
Speak to it. I could speak to it a little bit. So what was interesting is, so we're making 3 parts at a time. We had both presses running the same material, both presses, even though, different sets of components, everything. Middle row on both of these tools were cracking out. The material just didn't want to stretch the way that we had seen it act historically. And ultimately, noticed there's a lot of heat in the parts, there's a lot of cracking, just seemed like this material was behaving differently. And so when we switched to the water soluble coolant, without changing any of our geometry in the tooling, without changing our clearance or how much we're pinching the material, without changing anything, switching to the water soluble, we saw that our draws actually increased by a few thou, and that we were pulling more material in from the carrier strip, and we instantly had no cracking in the middle row. My original intent was to run one of the machines with the water soluble and one with the oil to kind of have apples to oranges, but the results were so fast and so powerful with the water soluble that we went from borderline having to run at risk and maybe scrap middle row because we're getting cracks and inconsistency to being able to get right back up to that 500 strokes a minute and walk away from the machine now and it's making good parts. So we switched the other oil right over to this, and I went back to Bob and said, hey, this is working fantastic. But again, is there anything we can do about the smell to make it a little bit more pleasant? And the other lubricant that we have sample to try will do that for us.
Very good. So I want to make sure I understand. So that is just for that one run of material that you received, or are you now using that?
I essentially switched from one heat of material to another, and instantly started seeing that issue with no other changes to tooling, press, setup, lubricant, nothing. And then after struggling through that for a little bit, I called Bob and said, hey, I really want to try something different for this. And so far we're seeing results instantly.
Yeah, I'm sure every metal stamper out there can relate to that dilemma
Yeah,
with incoming material, right? So it's nice to
right.
know you had a solution for that problem. And I'm assuming that that solution was put into place pretty quickly, right, to allow you to meet your,
Yeah,
your requirements. Yeah.
yeah, really within days. And I think a big lesson for us through all of this is, you know, when we have resources like Tower that we can work with and go and say, hey, this is what's going on. We need to lean on the vendors and the experts at whatever process it may be. We can use lubricant as another tool and another productivity gain. It's not just a necessary evil, it can actually help, but
Yeah.
you got to embrace it. And we, for the longest time, it was just, hey, run red oil for this, run a vanishing for that. And we never really dived into it. Now I think we've truly seen the power of taking that scientific approach and saying, okay, how can we be analytical and methodical about how we make this better and really work towards something. And I give Bob a lot of credit for putting up with all the questions and all the different iterations and everything over the last year and a half or so. It's definitely been a journey.
Yeah, that's
You know,
terrific.
it's been a lot of fun, Tyler, and it's truly it's what a partnership is, and as you said, if us as a vendor and a lubricant company can help you as a stamper and a customer, I mean, that's a win-win for everybody, right? If you're
Right.
up and making parts and you're happy, your customers are going to be happy. I'm going to be happy, and I think probably one of the most enjoyable parts about the whole process is not just the win. And when I say the win is you seeing such an improvement in productivity, but the
Right.
win is how well we collaborated together and looking at everything from a holistic approach, everything from, hey, this lubricant, this application method we have is nice, it works, it's what we've always done, but what if we looked at something different?
Right. How can it be
What's the
better?
potential? What if we look at, okay, and what does that do for us, right? And then once we do the application method, what happens with the lubricant and all the different things that we've done there. And truly the sharing of information
Yeah.
makes it really easy to do.
Yeah.
It really, you know, it, there wasn't ever a time when I would ask you a question, say, okay, what about this? Where is that? That if you didn't have the answer, we got it. And
Right.
um,
Well, it's like you said, it's a partnership, it's mutual success. And, I think that's something that we never really looked at the lubrication as being such an important part of our business and our production. And then to be able to work with someone like you guys and develop this partnership, now I know, and we've actually had a couple applications outside of this where I've had a really tricky part, having issues, and you've said, hey, I sent you this lubricant, try that or try the other one. And so it's taking this experience and now how do we apply it to all of our other projects and all of the other problem jobs, keep moving forward.
yeah, and I can speak from my own personal experience. I've been with Tower for, um, I'll say a long time. Uh, but in my previous life, I sat on Tyler's side of the out of the desk. You know, I worked in stamping houses. I was a tool maker and tooling foreman, and did an awful lot of stuff. Um, and lubricant was always like an afterthought, right?
Yeah.
And in my time at Tower, I've really learned, and everybody at our company is happy to share this. I mean, we don't say it just because um, we want to, because we're after, for lack of a better way to say it, we're after your business. Okay, no, we want your business, but we want to earn your business, and we want to be able to do that with results. And with the knowledge that our team has from a manufacturing background, I alluded to it earlier, we've got a lot of guys that have been in tooling for a long time. Several of us are former tool makers, Six Sigma black belts, and we've got a pretty good variety of team members to lean on, and to be able to bring that knowledge and apply it for companies like Marion and work with people like Tyler. It's a lot of fun. It's fun to share that and get to where you want to go.
Yeah, terrific. Well, hey, I really appreciate you guys being with us today. Tyler, thank you so much for sharing the story of what Marion's doing to improve productivity and efficiency and quality. And Bob, thank you for bringing the story to us and being such a conscientious supplier to the industry. And of course, thank you both for being loyal and outstanding PMA member companies as well. I gotta throw that in there. So again, thank you very much for sharing the story. Thank our viewers for watching, and yep, thank you.
Right. So again, thank you very much to the PMA and our wonderful PMA family, Tyler and everybody else that's helped to come together and put this all forward and make it happen. If you want to learn more about what we can do to help you, how Tower Metalworking Fluids can help you improve your operations, whether it's consolidation or productivity improvement, to getting that part to run at rate, you can find us on our website, towermwf.com. You can call us at our main office, 773-927-6161, or you can reach out to me directly, r.anderson@towermwf.com. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope to hear from you.